How to work with USAID, das ist das Thema unseres heutigen Webinars, zu dem ich Sie sehr herzlich begrüßen möchte. Mein Name ist Irene Lakageneder und ich bin die Leiterin des Außenwirtschaftscenter Washington. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie alle dabei sind und ich hoffe, dass wir eine spannende Stunde hier gemeinsam verbringen werden. Ich habe zwei wunderbare Sprecher dabei, eine Sprecherin und einen Sprecher von USAID, die ich gleich noch näher vorstellen möchte. Ja, vorab möchte ich vielleicht noch mich und das Außenwirtschaftscenter Washington als Organisator des Webinars ein bisschen näher vorstellen. Vielleicht haben Sie ja schon teilgenommen bei dem einen oder anderen Webinar unseres Außenwirtschaftscenters. Wir haben ja in den USA mehrere Büros, die eine regionale und auch eine inhaltliche Arbeitsaufteilung nach Branchen haben und nach Inhalten. Wir in Washington, in der Hauptstadt, in der politischen Hauptstadt der USA, sind für eben genau diese so ein bisschen auch handelspolitischen Themen zuständig. Wir machen einerseits Public Procurement Fragen, dann eben handelspolitische Fragen. Dann sind wir eben auch zuständig, weil Washington der Sitz ist der Weltbank, sind wir zuständig, das ist ein ganz wichtiger Bereich für die sogenannten IFIs, die International Financial Institutions. Neben diesem IFI-Thema widmen wir uns jetzt eigentlich zum ersten Mal der Organisation USAID, weil wir uns gedacht haben, auch hier bestehen sicher ganz viele und interessante Geschäftsmöglichkeiten für österreichische Firmen. Und genau dazu haben wir jetzt eben dieses Webinar organisiert, damit Sie hier aus erster Hand von den direkten Leuten von USAID Informationen bekommen, wie Sie hier in dieses Geschäft einsteigen können. Was kann ich noch sagen vorab? Ganz wichtiger Termin, falls Sie es noch nicht gehört oder gelesen haben, am 29.06. findet der diesjährige österreichische Exporttag statt. Sie können mich und meine Kollegin, die Theresa Weiß, beim Exporttag persönlich virtuell treffen. Der Exporttag ist ja leider schon zum zweiten Mal jetzt als virtuelle Veranstaltung, aber wie gesagt, wir sind auch zu Beratungsgesprächen da und würden uns freuen, dann im Rahmen des Exporttags auch mit Ihnen direkt Kontakt zu haben und eventuelle Projekte oder Fragen zu besprechen, die Sie jetzt vielleicht nicht im Rahmen des Webinars stellen möchten. Was kann ich noch vorab kurz erwähnen? Im Herbst werden wir, weil ich schon gesagt habe, wir haben einen großen Arbeitsschwerpunkt zum Thema IFIs. Im Herbst planen wir zum ersten Mal eine sogenannte Masterclass-Serie zu IFI-Themen gemeinsam mit dem Außenwirtschaftscenter Manila. Das wird sicherlich sehr interessant. Wir arbeiten jetzt gerade das Programm aus. Wer sich dafür interessiert, schicken Sie uns gerne ein E-Mail, dann merken wir sie schon einmal vor und ansonsten bekommen Sie hoffentlich automatisch auch eine E-Mail-Einladung, wenn Sie bei uns das Länderinteresse USA hinterlegt haben oder beziehungsweise sehen Sie auf unserer Homepage auf wko.at/Außenwirtschaft/USA immer unsere aktuellen Veranstaltungen der nächsten Zeit aller Außenwirtschaftscenter in den USA. Ja, das war jetzt so eine kleine allgemeine Einführung. Jetzt wollen wir aber wirklich zum Thema kommen. Es gibt in der US-Auslandshilfe, in der US Foreign Assistance, gibt es mehr als 20 Government Agencies, die solche Foreign Assistance Programs managen. Und darunter sind drei ganz prominente, nämlich DFC, USAID und die Millennium Challenge Corporation. Vielleicht werde ich jetzt auch der Höflichkeit halber, das habe ich vorhin noch nicht erwähnt, zu Englisch umsteigen, weil unsere beiden Sprecher sind natürlich Amerikanerinnen und Amerikaner und sprechen nur Englisch und werden dann auch ihre Präsentation auf Englisch halten. Das heißt, ich werde jetzt höflichkeitshalber auch auf Englisch switchen, denn Sie hören natürlich schon zu. So I will switch to English now. As I just mentioned, the three prominent programs or agencies in the field of development cooperation are DFC, USAID, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation. The Millennium Challenge Corporation is the young upstart among them. It was established in 2004 by President Bush, and as the name already suggests, it was set up to bring 21st century thinking to the development challenges of the new area. Then there is DFC. The International Development Finance Corporation, is the development finance institution of the US federal government. and it's primarily responsible for providing and facilitating the financing of private development projects in lower and middle income countries. It was formed in December 2019. USAID, that's the last one I'm going to mention because that is the one we're going to talk about today, and you will get a lot more information about it right now. So it's the grand dame of the US development, one could say. It was established in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy, and it portrays itself as the US government's premier development institution, and has been a leading force in the theory and practice of international development. Now, that already brings me to the next point, to introducing our fantastic speakers of today. I'm really happy to have those two with us today. First of all, Matthew, you can already see them. Hello and welcome. Matthew Johnson, he's the USAID's Industry Liaison and Communications Director of the Office of Acquisition and Assistance. And his job is to help to connect and engage with organizations around doing business with USAID. He has worked with USAID since 2008, and prior to joining USAID, he has, I think that's quite interesting, he served as the Director of Presidential Personal Correspondence and the Deputy Director of Presidential Writers at the White House. So that is quite interesting. And then we also have with us Rachel Chilton. She is the Deputy Director of Communications for USAID's Office of Acquisition and Assistance. And she also has a very interesting CV. She has 8 years of communication experience with USAID. And she has also lived and worked in Taiwan as well as Tanzania. And she has a graduate certificate in documentary filmmaking, so quite a broad spectrum. And not to forget, she speaks conversational Mandarin, Chinese, and basic Kiswahili. So in case anyone in the audience wants to ask her any questions in any of these languages, please go ahead. I might not be able to translate. Yeah, that's it. So that leaves me to just hand over to the two of you. I think, Rachel, you will start with the presentation. And yeah, thank you again for being with us and for taking the time to talk to our Austrian companies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for that lovely introduction. We really appreciate it. I will have to add German to my list of languages to learn. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate having the opportunity to be here to speak with you about USAID and how to work with the agency. During today's webinar, we will share information you need to know to be able to compete for and apply for USAID funding, including information on how the agency operates, key terms that you'll need to know, tips for how to submit proposals, how to identify and find funding opportunities where you can search to locate them. And by the end of this webinar, we hope to be able to equip you to begin to take steps towards a partnership with USAID. So following the presentation, I believe Irene already said, we're going to be happy to address any questions you might have. So please keep them in mind for the end of the session. I'm going to start this session off by talking a little bit about the agency, and then I will hand it over to Matt to talk more about our acquisition and assistance process more in depth. So just to get started, the U.S. Agency for International Development, also known as USAID, has a unique history, culture, and way of doing business, just like a lot of other organizations. This is important information to understand as you think about becoming a partner of USAID. The agency carries out U.S. foreign policy by improving the lives and well-being of people living in poverty, and at the same time expanding democracy and promoting free markets. Although our work is separate from political and military assistance, so our U.S. State Department and Department of Defense, also known as DoD, USAID programs do address both security and development objectives. And we work hard to build a world that is safer, healthier, and more prosperous for everyone. The United States is the world's largest donor of foreign assistance. We are extending help from the American people to millions of women, children, and men who live in deep poverty and are among the most vulnerable people in the world. We work to improve their lives in a variety of ways, including investing in agricultural productivity so that families don't go hungry, combating maternal and child mortality and deadly diseases like HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis, as well as diseases like Ebola and most recently COVID-19. I'm sure you've seen in the news a lot of our assistance recently, providing life-saving assistance in the wake of disasters such as hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, and even famine, promoting democracy, human rights, and good governance around the world, fostering private sector development and sustainable economic growth, helping communities adapt to a changing environment, as well as elevating the role of women and girls in all of our work around the world. And there's just so much more that I could talk about. I will cover a little bit just about our missions and where we work around the world. So our global team works in more than 100 countries around the world. We have these overseas offices called missions, which are typically co-located with US embassies in the capital of each country in which we work. I actually had the opportunity to work in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania at the US Embassy there for a while doing development outreach and communication, which was really exciting. We also have a number of regional missions that serve to implement specific regional programs. So examples might include our regional development mission for Asia located in Thailand, our Central Asia regional mission in Kazakhstan, our East Africa regional mission in Kenya, and we have a West Africa regional in Ghana, and there are a few more, but those are just some examples. Depending on the sector of our work and if relevant, we will work closely with our State Department colleagues at Post, as well as our counterparts from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, and the Department of Defense, also known as DoD. So we have a lot of civilian military cooperation, depending on the country context and if it's relevant. We are organized in 3 major staffing categories. We have foreign service officers who are US citizens that work in embassies worldwide. We have civil service employees like Matthew and myself who work for the federal government in Washington, DC and throughout the US. And we also have foreign service nationals, which is our largest group of staff who are natives to their respective country and are really kind of the backbone to our work because they understand the local context in which we are working. So I just want to talk a little bit about our operating framework. At the heart of our work is the core belief that each country must be able to lead its own development journey. So our vision is to empower grassroots efforts in local communities. We are making progress towards that goal by realigning how we work and partner so that we better support our partner countries. This means enabling a country's capacity to plan, finance, and implement solutions to local development challenges, and a commitment to see these through effectively, inclusively, and with accountability. USAID is therefore strategic in the types of activities and programs that we implement. And in doing so, we utilize a tool called the program cycle. You can learn more about it online. It looks at how we link everything we do, from our policies to strategic planning, to program design, to implementation, to monitoring and evaluation, and then how we incorporate all of the lessons learned back into our policies and how we might need to adjust and adapt. In addition, in Washington, we have a number of policies, strategies, frameworks, and visions that guide how we work. So for example, we have a global water strategy that outlines how we implement water programs around the world. And another example is our gender policy that outlines how we try to incorporate gender into every program and activity that we implement. And on the flip side, at each mission, USAID has its own country development cooperation strategy, also known as the CDCS. This document governs USAID's work locally in that particular country. And typically at missions, the CDCS it's a 5-year strategy that outlines goals in different technical areas. So they are revisited and revised and adapted usually around every 5 years. We also have an automated directive system, also known as the ADS, which is the agency's operational policies and procedures. And as you'll learn when Matthew speaks later, when you respond to a proposal or request for application, incorporating all of these different documents from USAID into your approach and into your plans will help increase the likelihood of receiving funding from the agency. So it's really important if you can have the time to familiarize yourself with those. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to discuss our acquisition and assistance process more in depth. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks everyone for taking the time to speak with us today. We thought it was really important just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of who USAID is, some of the key documents, because oftentimes I think there's a little bit of a misperception or misunderstanding about who USAID is as an organization and what we do. And really kind of those documents that Rachel highlighted just on that last slide, the CDCS, our programs and strategies, those are really, like she said, those are the guiding documents that really help to guide and inform the types of partnerships that we undertake and the type of work that we do as an organization, and then even what we're looking for and the types of partners that we want to work with. So I want to shift now in the presentation, talk to you a little bit more just about the partnering process and what it actually looks like to work with USAID. So last year, we had around $21.4 billion in programs that went to our global programs and funding. You can see here just a breakdown of funding by sectors of the different types of work that we do. As you'll note, our work in health, particularly around AIDS relief, and then this past year specifically related to COVID-19, is this largest part of our portfolio. And as Rachel highlighted, our work with providing humanitarian assistance around the world is really kind of one of the also key elements or key parts of the work that we do. Whenever there is a disaster or crisis happening overseas or outside of the United States, USAID is the organization that's called upon to act and to help lead a lot of those recovery efforts, oftentimes in coordination with our Department of Defense or others or other countries. So this gives you just a little bit of sense of kind of, how that $21.4 billion is broken down. And well, I know it probably seems like a lot of money. It may seem like a lot of money to some folks. Represents about 0.5% of the U.S. government federal budget. So we are a very small agency. But then when you spread that out, this kind of funding across 100+ countries, there's always more funding. There's always more that we wish we could do with the funding we have. And so we do often have to be selective in the different types of programs and activities and projects that we take on. So just a little bit about how we fund our work. As Rachel highlighted, we are a U.S. government agency, which means that all of the money that we get comes from American taxpayers. Our taxes go into USAID's budget, and as well as all the federal government budgets. And our budget levels and budget priorities are set by our Congress as well as by our president. And so, as you can imagine, as Congresses, as our political leaders change, sometimes USAID's budgets and priorities change. But that's kind of a part of the process of being a federal government agency. But our priorities and budget are set by our political leaders. But then our Congress itself sets USAID's specific funding levels, how much money we have to operate on any given year. Kind of where all this translates out to is our country development cooperation strategies or regional development cooperation strategies that Rachel highlighted. Those strategies and documents kind of predict what we think we're going to have funding-wise in any given country or different types of work or some of the priorities that we know we have from Congress. Really articulates, here's how we're going to invest our money, invest what we as an organization are going to do. And then from that, organizations or partners compete for USAID funds. Now, because we are a U.S. government agency, one of the things that we are required to do by U.S. law is to have organizations actually compete for our funding. We can't just hand our money out to anyone. There is a competitive process that we are required to go through in order to be able to partner with USAID. But one of the great things, one of the things I love about working at USAID, and I think even on this call, is that we work with more than 3,000 organizations around the world on any given year. We work with organizations from every country, every place you could possibly imagine, with every different type of organization we have. And you can see here just listed some of the different types of organizations that we work with. And so we are always looking for new partners. And I think oftentimes we get the question asked, is my organization an organization that USAID would be interested in working in? And I will say more often than not, the answer is yes. Like, we are always looking for organizations. We're looking for groups that are passionate about development work, that can help us achieve results, that can help people lift people out of poverty and help us achieve our mission. So I want to talk to you a little bit about something called our acquisition and assistance strategy. Acquisition is kind of a term we call contracts. Assistance is what we refer to as grants or cooperative agreements. Most of the strategy is not really relevant to you at all, except for the first two kind of guiding principles. The strategy outlines sort of how we as an organization want to be a partner, how we as an organization want to operate in ways that and how we kind of use our funding. So we released an acquisition assistance strategy in December of 2018. The first two principles of strategy, looking at how can we as an organization kind of diversify our partners. And so looking at, who actually works with USAID, we recognize we actually have a shrinking number of organizations that work with us on an annual basis. We want to see that expanding as we look at working with local partners, we look at organizations that are doing development work around the world. We want to see kind of the opposite trend. We want to see us working with more and more organizations around the world to achieve our work. But in order to do that, it kind of comes to the second guiding principle, which is changing how we partner. I'm not sure if any of you have ever tried to apply for USAID funding or try to work with USAID before in the past. It is challenging. It's not an easy. I think you have to understand the language. You have to understand the culture. It can be a challenging organization to work with. And so part of what we're trying to do is change how we partner, try and simplify the process, find new ways, new avenues of engaging with organizations, as well as kind of creating tools and resources that allow organizations to more effectively partner or work with USAID. One of the things coming out of our acquisition assistance strategy is something we call our New Partnerships Initiative. New Partnerships Initiative is really looking at how can we actually bring in new partners to the agency, looking at our own staffing, looking at our own kind of structural models that we have inside us, as well as organizations that are externally, looking at how can we actually bring in new groups to the agency to help us achieve our mission and to help us achieve the goals that we're trying to do as an organization. So through that, we kind of have set up funding opportunities kind of through three methods of what we're working through. So first is we have a number of funding opportunities that are specifically set aside for organizations that are new or underutilized to USAID. We kind of classify a new organization as a group that's received less than $5 million over the last 5 years. And an underutilized organization is a group that's received less than $25 million from USAID over the last 5 years. And so we're looking at organizations that are maybe new, but they are working in these developing countries. They're working in a lot of the same spaces and contexts they're working in, and trying to find ways and opportunities to set aside specific funding opportunities in order to engage with these groups. We do that through a number of different ways, but oftentimes we sometimes have contracts that are $400, $500 million. So there's not many organizations that are out there that can manage a $500 million contract from USAID. That really limits who we can work with. And so we're looking at kind of smaller pools of funding, more direct ways of actually engaging and connecting with folks. So that's one, kind of setting aside funding that's directly set up for new and underutilized partners. The second aspect is looking at mentoring awards. And so looking at the large organizations that we do work with, organizations that do have experience working with USAID, we're asking them to come in and actually be a mentor to newer organizations, help to mentor and walk organizations kind of through the process of managing US government funding, help them kind of set up some of their internal controls and structures. And as a part of some of these specific arrangements, we require them to give more than 50% of the funding that they receive directly to these new partners. And then third is looking at how we can leverage it for awards. And so we know there's a lot of really great organizations that are out there that are doing work. And what we're trying to do is figure out how we can actually partner with them and kind of maybe match dollar for dollar or $2 for every $1 they provide into the work that they're doing. One of the cool things, we actually have an incubator that's set up that's actually helping to expand or work with our own USAID staff to help partner with organizations, helping new organizations actually work with USAID, and helping us with some of our outreach efforts to actually reach out and engage with new organizations. Want to kind of briefly just highlight the New Partnerships Initiative process, if that's something that anyone is interested in following or applying for. But while this is a lot of boxes on a chart, it actually is a very simplified process of what the normal procurement process looks like at USAID. But with the New Partnerships Initiative, we have a specific funding opportunity that's set aside that we publicize and highlight on our website. If you go to usaid.gov/NPI, you'll see on there a specific section for New Partnerships Initiative funding opportunities. We invite organizations to submit concept notes to us, just simple 2 to 5 page concept notes that outline kind of what USAID is trying to achieve and how they can help us achieve those goals and objectives. And so it's just a simple concept note up front. That's all we're asking for. The agency reviews that concept note, really determine, is this something that we think kind of meets our goals and criteria? We think this organization has the relevant experience and can help us achieve this. If it does, then we invite the organizations into USAID through a process we kind of call co-creation, where we work collaboratively with an organization or with a group of organizations to really help to strengthen the concept notes and kind of help to develop it into a much fuller or larger proposal or project or activity that can be implemented. And if the co-creation process goes well, then we kind of have to go through the full US government process of issuing a request for application or request for proposals and getting some of the information that we require, that's required by the US government and US law in order to work with, to receive US government funding. But we're able to do that hand in hand, and we don't require that information up front. Typically, some of the more typical funding opportunities we have for USAID, we require all that information up front. And so it requires a lot of time and energy and financial investment to be able to do that. And so this really is a simplified process, and if anybody's specifically interested in this process, we're happy to discuss this a little bit more in depth with you, either one-on-one or as part of this webinar. One of the tools that I'm really excited about that we are setting up that we hope to launch in the near future is a Work with USAID platform. It's going to be a resource hub for any organization that's actually interested in the kind of the development community, working in the developing context, but also help you if you're interested in working with USAID. Have a number of innovative resources and tools that really help you and equip you to be able to go after and seek funding from USAID. So one of the things we have is a pre-engagement assessment. It's about, I think, 49 questions that allows you to basically answer some questions and kind of determine what is your eligibility and kind of position to be able to compete for US funding right now. If you, out of that assessment, you'll get a readiness plan that really identifies, all right, you're really strong in this area or you need help in this area in order to be able to work with USAID. And then we have training specifically set up that then allows you to help kind of build some of your capacity in order to work in these areas. One of the other areas I'm really excited about, though, is a partner directory, and something I think you'd be interested in joining. We're trying to set up a directory of organizations that are working in international development so they can register themselves, kind of identify themselves as an organization that's out there working, allow USAID staff, as we're doing market research, identifying organizations that are out there, but also for organizations to connect with one another. We know that oftentimes partnerships, it's not a single organization that's working with us. It's sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 organizations or a consortium of groups. And so the partner directory would be a really helpful tool and resource in order to be able to actually connect and engage with other groups. And so we'll share a link with you for our email address after this webinar, but we'd love to, get you signed up on our email listserv, and we can help inform you when the Work with USAID platform gets launched, hopefully in the very near future. So I want to shift now to talk specifically about, funding opportunities, how do we advertise them, kind of what that process looks like, and give you some tips and let you know kind of, what funding opportunities are you eligible for. So as I highlighted, USAID mainly works through acquisition and assistance. Acquisition refers to a contract where USAID is purchasing goods and services, and assistance is when USAID is providing a grant or a cooperative agreement in order to help an organization kind of carry out a project. A couple of distinctions between the two. Under acquisition or a contract, organizations are allowed to receive profit from the work that they're doing. So if you're a for-profit company, you're probably most likely interested in acquisition awards. If you're a nonprofit organization, then you're probably most interested in assistance awards. Under assistance awards, you're not allowed to receive any profit from the work that you're doing. But all of the funding opportunities that we have are all posted in 2 different websites. And so this is a requirement by US government law. Every funding opportunity, which we highlighted, which is called a request for proposal or RFP for a contract, is posted on sam.gov. We post things on there. If you go on there right now, you'll see probably 40, 50, 60 different funding opportunities specifically related for USAID all over the world. Every contract opportunity we have is posted on sam.gov. Every assistance opportunity we have is posted on grants.gov. It's another US government system, but every grant or cooperative agreement opportunity is posted on this website. And we look for funding opportunities through something we call notice of funding opportunities or request for applications, where we invite organizations to submit proposals or applications to USAID to get funding. And like I highlighted, the majority of all of USAID's funds actually go through a competitive process. The couple of exceptions we have to going through the competitive process are specifically related to humanitarian assistance, or if somebody has sort of like a totally innovative, never been thought of before idea to work with USAID. But these are, like I said, these are the 2 websites where all of the funding opportunities are posted in. for USAID or any US government agency for that matter. But one of the tools that we have at USAID to really help communicate to organizations that are interested in working with us is something we call a business forecast. This forecast looks at everything that we are planning on doing in the next year and provides kind of an advanced look of what USAID is looking at funding. So before anything ever goes on grants.gov or sam.gov, we put information on our business forecast. The forecast is updated daily and actually pulls from our own internal systems, our internal planning systems. And so it gives you a sense that you actually have kind of the most and best information about what USAID is planning on doing. The forecast, like I said, is updated daily. And it gives you an opportunity to filter by different sectors, countries, locations, different types of business size, kind of who's eligible to work with the agency or not. I have a little screenshot of here, one opportunity that's on the business forecast. As you can see here, it's a funding opportunity in Serbia. We have a point of contact listed on here. It gives you a sense of what the program description is, how much money is going to be that will be a part of the award, will we anticipate actually releasing a solicitation. So it really is a treasure trove of information, and really encourage you, if you're interested in working with USAID, take a look at our business forecast. One of the other things we do with our business forecast, we actually just did this yesterday morning. We talked to about 700 people, but we have a quarterly business forecast call or webinar. We invite organizations to submit questions to us about all the upcoming funding opportunities that we have in our business forecast. And so ask questions about, is this solicitation date going to happen? Or, is this media fund activity, is it going to include building a website? Or whatever question you have about a specific funding opportunity. But it really gives you an opportunity to ask questions and kind of plan in advance of any kind of funding opportunity that gets posted on grants.gov or sam.gov. One of the things I'll note, the organizations that work with USAID on a regular basis, before anything ever goes on sam.gov or grants.gov, they often already have a proposal lined up. They have individuals lined up, and they have teams of people ranged up or businesses ranged up to actually partner with them to work with USAID. And they do that through the business forecast. And so the business forecast is really a tool that allows you to begin planning months in advance of an actual funding opportunity, to begin thinking through if it's something you want to pursue or something you want to work with USAID. And so it's a really helpful tool for you to kind of go through and look at. I think right now we probably have close to 270, 280 different programs that we're planning on implementing or seeking partners for in the next year. And so it's just a treasure trove of information. One of the things that I do want to specifically talk to you about is kind of eligibility of international organizations. So, based on your location will oftentimes determine whether or not your organization is able to even compete or apply for funding. So we at USAID communicate this through something called the Principal Geographic Code. It really helps to identify who is eligible to actually apply for funding from USAID. And so there's three main codes that you're particularly interested in. So code 937, and I'll actually go back one slide just to show you on our business forecast. But if you notice on our business forecast, it says Principal Geographic Code, allows you to at least identify these codes on the business forecast to determine if it's something you're eligible for. But code 937, we're basically looking for organizations that are in the United States or in the specific, or in developing countries or specific country that we're working in. So if you're based in Austria, you may necessarily not be eligible to work with USAID if you see something listed as a 937. Principal Geographic Code 110 is specifically looking at, independent states of the former Soviet Union or developing country for working with USAID. And then the kind of key code for you is specifically is code 935. And that's basically any country, any organization, no matter where you're located, except for countries that would be prohibited from working with the US government, you're eligible to apply for funding from USAID. So if you're going through the business forecast or looking at something on SAM or grants.gov, you really want to be looking for funding opportunities that are identified as section or code 935. Well, one of the things I do want to specifically note, though, is that there may be times your organization is eligible if you see something advertised as code 937. If you have let's say you have an office that's set up in Kenya, you may actually be eligible to apply for funding through that. And so if you have a local office working in a particular country that USAID is working in, there's a good chance that you actually would be eligible to work with USAID. And I would encourage you, as a part of the business forecast process or the solicitation, reach out to one of the points of contacts and kind of get clarity. Would my organization be eligible to apply for this particular funding opportunity? But these are kind of 3 important codes for you to understand and know if you're interested in doing business with USAID. I want to give you just a couple of tips on kind of how to work with USAID. So these are some very basic tips, but honestly, the things that we see come up all the time. First and foremost is read the entire solicitation carefully. On a solicitation, we outline what are the goals and objectives that USAID is trying to achieve. How do we want to do it? Who are we looking to partner with? How is your proposal going to be evaluated in the work that you're doing? And so it's really important to read the entire solicitation. One of the things I appreciate about how we work is that for every solicitation, we actually have an open period of questions. It's typically the first week or so of a solicitation when it's been issued. We invite organizations to submit questions to us. If you don't understand something in the solicitation or something's not clear, you can submit questions to USAID, and we answer all of those questions and publish them online to really help you understand what the funding opportunity is and understand what we're trying to do. Third is follow the instructions in the solicitation. Because we have to compete all of our funding, we have to go through it is a competitive process to get USAID funding. We have to have a level playing field of how we're evaluating and how we're looking at organizations. And unfortunately, if an organization isn't following the instructions in this specific solicitation, then that means we have to disqualify you from the work. And so, if you're spending a week or 2 weeks working on a proposal or working on a document for USAID, it's very unfortunate if you get disqualified without even your proposal being reviewed because you didn't follow the instructions. And so it's so important to follow the instructions. But what USAID is looking at in these proposals is really looking at, can organizations demonstrate their technical expertise, their past performance and ability to accomplish the work that we're looking to achieve. At USAID, all of our staff, their foreign service officers, our folks that are posted overseas, their promotions are based off of how well their programs achieve their goals and objectives. And so when they're reviewing proposals from organizations, they want to know, like, hey, this organization is amazing. Like, they've done this before, they can do it again. We can kind of work collaboratively together to help achieve our goals and objectives. And so it's really important, to focus on your technical expertise, your past performance, and really demonstrate your ability to accomplish the work. And then I would also, just say, don't let USAID make assumptions. If you're putting together a proposal, it's really important to be as clear and specific as possible. Oftentimes, we see organizations kind of making assumptions. Well, USAID will see that in my CV, or they'll see that on our website that we can do this. Unfortunately, if we're ever in a position where having to make assumptions, that always puts you at a disadvantage. We want to see things that are clear and articulate that you're able to do something. And then finally, I would just consider looking at other organizations that have experience working with USAID and partnering with them. It's really a great way to get your foot in the door. It's really a great way to begin engaging with USAID and kind of the U.S. international development community. So definitely consider taking a look at that. And then finally, I do want to highlight just, kind of registration requirements to work with USAID or any government agency for that matter. For any organization that gets U.S. government funding, there's kind of 3 key systems that you have to be registered in. It's DUNS, you have to have an in-cage code, as well as be registered in SAM, or the System for Award Management. These are the only registration systems. We don't have any kind of other short list of organizations that we work with that you want to get on. These are just the basic requirements of managing U.S. government funding that you have to be registered in. And so we have a helpful video on our website. It's called Registration Expectation. Gives you kind of a short video explaining how the registration process works, as well as we've got a fact sheet or 2-page sheet that kind of walks you through the process. Unfortunately, we don't own these systems. These are U.S. government-owned systems, and so they are sometimes a little bit complex and difficult to manage and navigate, but we have some helpful tools that will hopefully help you in the registration process. With that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Rachel, again, just to talk a little bit about how to stay connected with us at USAID.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. Before we jump into Q&A, I just wanted to highlight a few ways that you can stay connected and engaged with us. You can sign up for our USAID Industry Liaison A&A email distribution list. And if you would like to be added to it, let's see if I can type in the chat box here. You can email industryliaison@usaid.gov, and we will be happy to add you to that email distribution list. You can also follow us on Twitter. We have a Twitter account called Work with USAID. I will drop the link in here as well for that. And we also welcome you to join our LinkedIn group, also called Work with USAID, both on our Twitter account and in the LinkedIn group. We try our best to post any upcoming USAID funding opportunities, as well as partner resources, so different tips like our quick reference resource guides, upcoming events like our business forecast webinar that Matt noted we hosted yesterday. I think we had about 700 people on the call yesterday. And then on Twitter, also the first Monday of every month, we do host a Mondays with Matt Twitter chat, where we're online live for 2 hours from, I believe it's noon to 2 East Coast time, responding to any questions that you might have. I think the next one might actually be the second Monday of July, just because the first Monday is a holiday. But we will be posting announcements about that on our Twitter account, as well as our LinkedIn group. So please feel free to email us if you want to be added to our distribution list. You may also use that email to ask us any specific questions you might have. If you want to schedule a chat with us to learn more about a specific topic, we're more than happy to speak with you. Our door is always open, and please, we welcome any questions you might have. And if you would like to follow us on our social media accounts, we also welcome discussion and engagement there. And with that, I just want to thank everyone again for taking the time to sit and listen to our presentation. I believe we are going to jump into the Q&A session momentarily. I believe Irene is going to help moderate that. So thank you again.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel and Matthew. That was really an awful lot of information during that short time. I really learned a lot, and I think that all our listeners did too. So that was really, really helpful. We already received some questions, so let's just get right into the Q&A session. One participant was asking that, as you are being financed by US taxpayers, we would assume that you engage mainly with US partners whenever possible. So what is the additional value, or what are the chances of Austrian organizations or companies to have to contribute to be considered for you? I mean, you've talked a little bit about it, about this principle geographic code. You've talked about that, but you know, the word is spreading, like this Buy American issue is even in Europe and in Austria. It's been on the media. So I think everyone is a little nervous, like kind of thinking, oh, do they even want foreign companies, foreign organization participating in their project? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on this question.
No, that's a great question. I think, you know, I will say there are certain programs or sectors where we are required to go with US-based organizations, you know, whenever possible, specifically around, you know, with food areas. We have like a large agricultural programs delivering food assistance around the world. We're, you know, always required to, if possible, to go through US-based organizations. But, you know, some of the things like the Buy America Act that you highlighted a reference, there are certainly aspects of it that apply to USAID, but because of most of our work and programs are actually like overseas, you know, the impact, I would say, on USAID will be relatively limited, and probably for the most part, most of the things that would be required of USAID under the Buy America Act, we already buy American for those things. But I think the other important thing to note is that kind of how USAID's funding is broken up. And so the Buy American Act is specifically is related to our contracts, our work with contracts. That actually only represents about a third of US government, of the $21 billion that we obligate or have for programs every year. The other 2/3 of funding actually doesn't impact those programs at all, our assistance programs, the grants and cooperative agreements that we have. So I think I will say we are still trying to figure out some of how Buy America Act will impact us. But I mean, I think it's a great question on kind of what additional value does an Austrian organization contribute. I think for USAID specifically, as Rachel highlighted, we're sort of like outside the bounds oftentimes of like, what are the political and military things that are happening? We're really trying to do like the most good for the most people, kind of in the most innovative and best ways. And so I think with that, one of the cool things is we have the ability we're really seeking out organizations and partners that are, that have experience that can help us achieve kind of development goals and objectives. And so no matter where you are, like we're looking for ideas from anywhere. It doesn't matter if your ideas are from Austria or from, Kansas City. We're really looking for organizations. And so it really comes down to, I would say like, what is the experience that an organization has and their kind of ability and network to be able to help us achieve our goals and objectives.
That sounds great. The next question, so that is a little bit of good news. Next question, there's obviously a company from the health sector. So they are asking, could you let me know about possibilities for an SME within e-health applications to exchange data across borders?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would be curious for that individual to maybe contact us and we can connect them with someone in our global health program. Depending on what countries you're interested in working in, we do have a very large health data program. And I think we're always looking for innovative ideas of how we can collect information about what's happening in different health sectors. And so I certainly think it's a possibility within the work that we're doing.
All right, that sounds good as well. Then I have another question. So you already mentioned the number and you said you're working with like 3,000 organizations from all over the world. So what is approximately, I mean, this kind of like adds to the first question that we already talked about. What is like the percentage or so how likely is it for Austrian companies or organizations to participate in your projects? Is there like, can you guess more or less?
I mean, I think it really comes down to, so I think there's a couple pieces I'll just highlight. I think for every funding opportunity or every program that USAID does that I have in our business forecast, one of the things that we do is kind of try and do a level of market research. What organizations are out there locally, throughout Europe and the United States and others that are doing work in a similar space. And so one of the things we're trying to set up this partner directory is actually give a space for our own staff to do market research to identify what are some of the groups that are out there already doing work in these particular areas. And so I think one of the things I would say for Austrian companies is if you see a funding opportunity on our business forecast, or if there's a particular sector area that you're interested in working with USAID, contact us and let us know, and we can help make those connections to the folks in the field. I would say it's not an issue because you're based in Austria. We don't want to work with you. It's probably more we just don't know that you're out there and exist. And so it's good to kind of get up front in that market research. And I think generally speaking, the principal geographic codes, we're deciding those as a part of our market research. We know that there's a bunch of US companies, or we know there's some local companies, or we know that there's this great Austrian company that's out there that can do the work. And so there's an opportunity, even if something is listed on the business forecast as the principal geographic code is like 937. If a company were to reach out to the point of contact on there and say, hey, we're doing this, here's our work, here's kind of how we can help USAID, it's 100% possible that they could change that principal geographic code and actually make it eligible for a company from Austria to apply for it. And so the business forecast is not set in stone. It is just kind of like our planning. Here's what we're planning on doing. And so it's really important to let USAID know that you're out there and the work that you're doing. There are so many organizations that are out there. It's sometimes hard to like figure out who's doing what in what space. And so just introducing yourself is really important.
That is actually good news, because it means that if you're working in a special niche and you have a really special product that you need and that nobody else is producing, then actually it doesn't matter where you come from, right? Okay, great. Now, one thing that you have mentioned, you have said that if you're starting off and you're probably working for the first time, you want to do business with USAID. So you said that it's important to partner with organizations that already work with USAID. How would an Austrian company wanting to do that, how would they get to know those other companies? Do they have to do it through their own network, or is there a possibility like a database where you can see, okay, you have those projects with those partners where they can kind of have a look and see, oh, this could be an interesting cooperation? How would that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So right now, so we have and it'll be included in the presentation that's sent out. We have a slide in there that actually has our top 30 organizations that work with USAID that get the most funding from USAID. Every one of those organizations, if you go to their website or connect with them on LinkedIn or one of those tools, you'll actually be able to find they have a business development specialist or person that's kind of specifically focused on finding new partners, new businesses to work with. And so I would look there first and kind of consider, reaching out to the organizations that way. When we have our partner directory launched on our Work with USAID platform, that'll be another great resource and place to actually connect and engage with these partners. You can do research and identify the organizations. One of the questions that people ask when they're registering on is, do you currently work with USAID? And it'll tell you the countries, the sectors, kind of points of contact or who to contact in the information or on the website. So I would do that probably as well once that website gets launched.
All right, that would be helpful. Then one other question is like, how easy or how difficult is it to work with you or to apply for projects? Because, we've been working with World Bank projects for some time, advising companies, and I know that some companies, in Austria, we have a lot of SMEs, and some of them, for them, it's like so much bureaucracy, so much work. A lot of the bigger companies internationally, we know they have consultants, but they also cost a lot of money, and they need those consultants to really get into business. So how would you guess how difficult is it for an Austrian SME with a really great product, but probably not a very big company with a lot of people who can deal with so much bureaucracy? How easy is it for them to do business with you, and do they need a consultant, or do you think it's actually, you've mentioned this USAID platform. With this platform, should it be easy for them to just do it by themselves?
So that's a great question. It's a hard question to answer. I think the answer is it can be difficult. It is a competitive process, and oftentimes when have funding opportunities, we get 100 proposals, for a single funding opportunity, and so it is a competitive process. And I think our hope is through that competitive process, sort of the best ideas rise to the top. And so I think, I would note that there are consultant organizations that are set up that help groups kind of get in the door. I think from my perspective, and I think one of the hardest things, and one of the reasons why we try and talk about kind of who USAID is, we have our own culture and our own language, and the organizations that are used to working with USAID understand some of that culture and that language. And I think that's one of the benefits of having kind of a mentor or somebody partnering with somebody to work through the process of really helping to understand, when we talk about self-reliance, what does that mean? Or we talk about capacity building, there's all sorts of, not weird, but there's USAID language that's really helpful to know, and that I think is important to be able to articulate in an application or proposal. So, but, I'll say we see things on both sides. We see people, their first time ever going after funding, they've got an amazing idea and it works out really well, they get it. And so it really just depends on the organization and kind of, what your capacity is and experience is, and kind of working with a large donor.
All right. Yeah, it can also be like being at the right place at the right time. If you just have a project looking for exactly that product that this company is offering, and that's really unique, then you're at the right time and the right place. Yeah. One other question is, what's the growing area of interest for USAID? Is all the money now going into vaccination and post-COVID recovery programs, or are there other areas of growth? So is it like water, energy, or what could that be?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple key areas of growth. I think we have a new administration, new leadership, both as the president as well as the head of our agency. I think specifically with that, I know climate change, climate adaptation is a huge area of growth within the agency. The bar chart I showed earlier, I think like 1% of our funding previously went in that area. I think they'll see a lot of growth, and specifically in that area. With the new administration, the USAID is being called on, I think, to play a greater role in COVID-19 response efforts and getting vaccines out and around the developing world. Yeah, is a big area of growth. I don't know, Rachel, if you have any other thoughts of other kind of areas that you see the agency growing in.
I know another priority is that currently the Northern Triangle and trying to think of the latest term, irregular migration to the United States, and trying to address the root causes in those specific countries, whether it be access to education, healthcare, a lot of other things going on in those countries right now. So that's another priority at this time. Our administrator actually is on a trip there. I think she comes back today. So she was just visiting El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. So that's another big area.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Then as we're approaching 11 o'clock, one last question that I would have, is it easier for a European company to participate in USAID tenders through a US-based subsidiary, or does that not really make a difference for you? Unless, you've mentioned all the registrations and the process one has to go through, but besides, is there any difference or?
I would say, yes, it would certainly be easier going through a US subsidiary working with USAID. I think, yeah, that would definitely be easier to do that.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I don't want to keep you any longer. We're like nearly 11 o'clock sharp. I want to thank you one more time so much. This was really, really interesting. And I would love to work further with you in the future. And maybe we can, continue this series of webinars and get probably a small group of people together for a workshop if anybody is interested. But thank you so much. This was really, really interesting. And to the audience one more time. So in the next couple of days, I guess in the middle of next week, you will receive an email with the video of the presentation. And if you have any questions after today, you can always just email us. So thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.